Welcome back to BLOCKTV. It's time for Cryptonomics. Now, Facebook's Libra has been making headlines across the mainstream financial press in the last few days, seemingly for all the wrong reasons. Reports in the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg say that some of the main would-be partners in the Libra association appear to be having second thoughts about their involvement in the project, the two biggest names mentioned being Visa and Mastercard. These concerns were enough to prompt a response from Libra chief David Marcus, who took to Twitter to dispel or alleviate the concerns. With me in studio is BLOCKTV senior correspondent Asher Westrop-Evans with more details. So, anything that Facebook and Libra do make headlines, but definitely the financial press picked up on this one. What are we hearing?
Okay, so firstly, that New York Times, Wall Street Journal articles coming out with this reporting, really that focus in on Visa and Mastercard, hesitant, potentially talking about pulling out of this project amid the regulatory firestorm that's taken off in the wake of the announcement from earlier this year. It's really not that surprising in the sense that we haven't heard from other players that are supposedly part of the association. Exactly. There's still reporting suggests that none of the additional Libra association players outside of Facebook have committed that $10 million stake that they're supposed to be providing in order to be an access node and part of the Libra association themselves. So in that sense, that isn't surprising, but to hear of those two massive names and the two names that legitimize so much of the payment processing elements of this Visa and Mastercard of the Libra Association, thinking about pulling out could be a serious blow to the Libra project and to Facebook's overarching goals as a whole. So
this is a strategy. They're keeping the project at arm's length, kind of to wait and see approach to see what's going to happen with the approval with regulators. Now we know that both Visa and Mastercard are kind of independently feeling out the blockchain space, maybe thinking about putting out their own type of currency. I don't know if it's going to be a competitor or similar to Libra, but they're active in the sphere already.
Right, exactly. I mean, that was said to be a lot of the impetus for these companies wanting to get involved in this Libra project. When Tencent Holdings over in China took out control of the digital payments space, Visa, Mastercard, a lot of those other similar payments companies felt really burned by that, saying they'd missed out on a big opportunity and a big chance to take control in the Chinese market, which really is now dominated by this digital and mobile payment space. They didn't want to miss that opportunity when it came to Libra, and so they have jumped on this opportunity up until now. But with this backlash, they may not be willing to go ahead with Facebook at the helm and potentially, as you suggested, might want to take up their own projects. Right. But all this is scheduled to come to a head around October 14th when the Libra Association members are set to meet in Geneva to discuss the potential next steps and what to do moving forward.
Right. So that's a couple of weeks out. Interesting time. Now, obviously the headlines didn't leave Facebook silent, and David Marcus took to Twitter. What's he saying?
Yeah, so David Marcus came out with a Twitter thread shortly after the articles came out, responding directly to the Wall Street Journal. He said, "Felt like addressing this. Number one, official first wave of Libra Association members will be formalized in the weeks to come."
All right, that's the meeting.
Exactly, October 14th meeting. And then in his second tweet in the thread, he says, "Change of this magnitude is hard and requires courage. Plus, it will be a long journey. For Libra to succeed, it needs committed members, and while I have no knowledge of specific organizations' plans to not step up, commitment to the mission is more important than anything else." He goes on, but that really carries the crux of what he was saying, of what Marcus is saying there, really trying to downplay, no, we might not have formal commitments. I mean, he doesn't deny that the article's wrong. There's implication that the reporting is...
Not at that point. He does on a different point.
Exactly, on a different point later on, but on that specific issue, he doesn't say that the reporting is incorrect, saying that there's still the formalization elements that need to be set up. There's still a long way to go, which is I suppose fairly consistent with the line that Libra and Facebook's representatives have been saying so far. This is a consultative process. This is a work in progress. We're working to develop this. Nothing's finalized.
But still not backing down from a 2020 launch date. So they're not reevaluating.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, as the last we've heard of it, the second half of 2020 is still the goal for the launch. It seems, with all the chaos that's going on around this project still, the regulatory firestorm that's continuing to rage with bipartisan support in the United States for taking these companies to task and keeping the Libra Association and Facebook accountable in this instance, it still seems very ambitious, that time frame. But in positive news for Libra and for Facebook as a whole, FINMA, that's the Swiss regulatory agency, has said they will not stand in the way of the Libra project at this stage, according to reporting, but
So getting the green light in Switzerland is a step in the right direction, but getting shot down
everywhere else.
else.
Exactly.
Now, it's the concerns. I mean, don't stop with Marcus. The man himself, Mark Zuckerberg, addressed the launch strategy with employees, as revealed in leaked talks with employees that were unsurfaced by Verge. We got a transcript of that, and he mentions Libra.
Yes, certainly. So in these formal talks he had with employees, reportedly addressing concerns that some employees had around the direction of Facebook as a company, what the major projects were. He dedicated a portion of this conversation to talking about Libra and some of the key sort of choice quotes I've taken out that I think represent a bit of what he was saying. So firstly, he says, and I quote, "Part of what we're trying to do overall on these big projects now that touch very socially important aspects of society is to have a more consultative approach. So not just show up and say, all right, we're here, we're launching this, here's a product, your app got updated, now you can start buying Libras and sending them around. We want to make sure we get that there are real issues."
And that's been the line all along, right? Yeah.
Exactly. This is a new Facebook. They're taking a new approach. No longer does Facebook simply move fast and break things. They're part of the global community. They consult, they work with regulators. That's really been a line Facebook's been pushing publicly, and to hear Mark Zuckerberg saying that in a, I suppose, more private setting, whether it's truly private or not, but that is sort of indicative of a consistent line that they're saying. We're consultative now, we're community members, and we're going to play by the rules.
And he kind of goes a bit more into depth on those regulatory meetings and between Libra teams and state officials. What do you got there?
Exactly. So he goes on to say, part of the process is going to be public. Like the hearings that David did over the last couple of days, the public things I think tend to be a little more dramatic, but a bigger part of it is private engagement with regulators around the world. And those I think are more substantive and less dramatic.
All right, so maybe that when we hear about FINMA approving, maybe that's a result of some of those one-on-ones that went under the
exactly. Pointing out as well that just what's public facing, what we're seeing, the big dramatic hearings at Congress, that is not really where the substance is happening. And we all saw that. BLOCKTV reported when Marcus was in front of Congress a few months ago. There was a lot of show. There was a lot of back and forth. A lot of
but no direct policy to come out.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of representatives use it as an opportunity to grandstand or make big points that was played well in headlines around the world, but didn't necessarily lead to substantive points. That's happening behind closed doors, and supposedly, at least according to Zuckerberg, there's progress.
All right. And then a last one that you chose that kind of looks at a bit of a bigger picture when it comes to Facebook, right?
Exactly. Not just exclusively talking about Libra, but some of Facebook's more substantive approaches. Again, I quote, "I actually wouldn't be surprised if we end up having similar engagements like this on other socially important things that we're trying to move, like our big push to get towards more encryption across our messaging apps. That will over time be very sensitive when we get closer to rolling it out. Law enforcement obviously is not going to be psyched about that, but we think it's the right thing to protect people's privacy more, so we'll go defend that when the time is right." That actually, that's a powerful one in my opinion. That actually is the standout quote to me, because that is indicative of Facebook's approach of balancing the role of working with regulators, but also addressing individuals' privacy concerns, which have been such an issue with Facebook since, of course, the Cambridge Analytica scandal and other scandals that have dogged Facebook in the last several years regarding their privacy policies and the lack of transparency, the very opaque nature of Facebook's privacy approach, given how much data and control they have in so many people's lives. Billions of users that they have data on, and what they're doing with that data, how they're handling it, whether law enforcement has access to it, are they selling it, are they keeping it? There's been such a concern, and it was obviously one of the peak concerns that people had when it came to Libra being rolled out, where now will they tie that private data to the financial data?
Connecting the finance aspect with everything that they already have, it is something to keep you up at nights. I don't know if he settled the score with the statement, but at least he's giving us a direction. Excellent. So we've got stuff to look forward to on the Facebook front, but have to mention it. And every time we talk about Facebook, we have to address that there's another platform that's coming out even sooner that's not getting any of this attention. Of course, I'm talking about Telegram and their TON network.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the elephant in the room, the Russian bear in the room. I don't know what it is, Ron, but Telegram, they've got the Telegram Open Network scheduled to launch contractually come October 31st. They have a deadline. They have a hard and fast deadline. Now, obviously, we're talking a scale of magnitude that's a little bit different. Facebook has about 2.5 billion users. Telegram has about 365 million users. But I'll tell you,
Still a
Rod,
substantial
it's
amount.
exactly, it's still substantial, and also it's a lot more pointed in who's using Telegram. It's a very privacy-focused community. It's often been cited for a lot of illicit and nefarious activity that's going on Telegram's
On
networks.
one side, on the other side, like, freedom fighters and
Exactly,
protests
exactly.
and stuff
But
like
it's
that.
certainly things that fall under the purview of government-interested activities that are difficult to track and difficult to watch. Have caused a lot of ire among regulators around the world, and so far have sort of resisted regulation on a number of different fronts. Famously, the Duro brothers do not like to be regulated, and they're willing to push ahead even if they're greatly disliked by their own governments, other governments, whatever. So they're scheduled to launch October 31st, and regulators still are just not dealing with this. They're not talking about it. It's not in the public eye. The US particularly is consumed with Libra. Even Europe, which is a lot closer to sort of the affair in a literal sense, doesn't seem to be addressing Telegram as a big potential concern. It seems to just be moving ahead, sort of under the radar, skating through. They raised $1.7 billion in their funding round. There's a lot of money in this project, a lot of scale, a lot of
Once
growth.
it goes up, it's going to be the biggest blockchain, or the most used blockchain in the world.
Right.
I have to shout out to the folks at Decrypt, who did a nice survey of some regulators across Europe and the UK, kind of asking where they stand on Telegram. The responses were, we don't know enough about them, and we're not focusing on them. So just making your point all that stronger.
Exactly.
Everybody's the eyes on Facebook and Libra. Telegram's flying under the radar. We'll see if that holds.
Certainly.
All right, Asher, thank you very much for breaking that down. That was Cryptonomics. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more blockchain and cryptocurrency news.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.